Chapter 254. It's no wonder that Orochimaru was so surprised that Sasuke's strength improved so fast. After all, when he was still in Konoha, he was also called a genius. He wasn't so powerful when he was Sasuke's age. Let him go. Kabuto is one of us, and it was an unintentional mistake. Orochimaru also understood Sasuke's habits. He didn't use a commanding tone with a smile on his face, but said to Sasuke in a negotiating tone. Obviously, Orochimaru knew more about Uchiha Sasuke than Kabuto. His mind was much more sophisticated. He knew that this kid was a proud person. Forcing him not only won't make him yield, but will also cause Sasuke to resist fiercely. Casually glancing at Orochimaru, Sasuke put the Kusanagi sword on Kabuto's neck back into the scabbard on his waist. After all, Otogekyure was Orochimaru's territory, and he still had to give him some face. His strength is improving so fast. He is worthy of being the descendant of the Uchiha clan. His reputation is well deserved. Orochimaru sighed in his heart. This was from the bottom of his heart. The outstanding figures of Uchiha in the past were like carps crossing the river. There were too many geniuses. Orochimaru didn't have any Kekkei Genkai. He was an ordinary civilian ninja like Jiraiya. He struggled step by step. Compared with the innate advantages of these big families, he naturally couldn't match them. But it's precisely because of their talent that they deserve to be exterminated. Laughing in his heart, Orochimaru sneered. Such a family of geniuses was naturally envious and hateful. Indulging in the fantasy of the past, they deserved to be exterminated. He stared at Uchiha Sasuke. When he was about to speak, Sasuke's indifferent voice came first. I'm not interested in knowing what your plan is. The Akatsuki organization you just mentioned seems to be the organization of those two men. Tell me their details. Sasuke's tone was very firm. He was also very curious about this Akatsuki, a mysterious organization that can make Dustless and Itachi obey at the same time. How can he not know about it? Especially, Orochimaru seems to be a figure of this organization in the past. In addition, he can also spy on Itachi and Dustless. This guy, Kabuto's fist was sweating. He didn't expect Orochimaru to value Sasuke so much. He couldn't help but sigh. He has been Orochimaru's dog for so many years, but he's still not as good as Uchiha Sasuke. Through this period of time, Do also thoroughly recognized his value. He adjusted his attitude and stood silently to the side, quietly listening to the conversation between the two. Orochimaru didn't hide anything and told Sasuke all the secrets of the Akatsuki organization he knew. Anyway, it's not important. Maybe he can pull Sasuke to fight against the Akatsuki organization in the future. After about half an hour, Orochimaru told Sasuke everything he knew about Akatsuki without any concealment. Collecting tailed beasts. Sasuke frowned. After hearing the purpose of Akatsuki, he couldn't help but think of the tailed beasts in Naruto's body. After 2 years, he also knew a lot of things that he didn't know in the past, but soon his face became cold. He thought that he had cut off the so-called fetters. Naruto's life and death had nothing to do with him. What he cared about most was the trace of Dustless and Itachi. Those two men deserved to die. Remembering the night of the Uchiha's destruction, Sasuke's body was covered with a bloody mist. The cold killing intent was like 1,000 years of ice, freezing everything, and his temperament was cold and isolated from the world. Orochimaru frowned without a trace. He could understand Itachi's hatred. After all, it was Itachi who destroyed the Uchiha, but this has nothing to do with Dustless. But even so, Orochimaru was too lazy to talk nonsense. This kind of person blinded by hatred has lost his rational judgment and is destined to become his meal. You just said that you want to calculate the people of the Akatsuki organization, so count me in. Thinking of Orochimaru's previous plan, Uchiha Sasuke's mind flashed, and his tone was resolute. The unprecedented determination made Orochimaru deeply moved. The so-called plan is to use the attraction of tailed beasts to attract the attention of Akatsuki and Konoha at the same time, and let them gather together in Orochimaru's Otogekyure. Konoha and Akatsuki are different. There is no need for weak sparks. When they meet, the people on both sides will fight. Since I can't retaliate against those two men for the time being, I can only retaliate against the organization they belong to first. The cold contained endless killing intent, like the ancient Sanskrit, full of magic that will never fade away and time can't decay it. Sasuke didn't care whether Orochimaru would agree or not. In the dark space, only Orochimaru and Kabuto were left, and he disappeared out of thin air. Orochimaru-sama, this kid is too reckless. He must not be allowed to participate in this plan. Seeing Uchiha Sasuke leave, Kabuto immediately became active and advised Orochimaru. Such a thorough plan will cause a big mess if he participates in it. People who can't control their emotions and act according to their own ideas are not worth using. It's useless. Even if you don't let him participate in this plan, he will do it alone. Shaking his head, Orochimaru was very sure. It was because he knew Sasuke's character very well that he was too lazy to persuade him. This kind of person is not useful even if he says a few words. Instead of letting him act alone, it's better to let him join this slaughter feast. Yakushi opened his mouth and finally closed it. Otogekyure Orochimaru is the dictator. Others can only listen to his opinion and can't change Orochimaru's will. Especially the fact that, as Orochimaru said, even if Sasuke is not allowed to participate in this plan to pit Konoha Ninja Village and Akatsuki, he will act without hesitation. Chapter 255. Kabuto also knows that Uchiha Sasuke is such a person. It's difficult for him to listen to Orochimaru's opinion, let alone order him like this. In this case, as Orochimaru said before, it's better to let him join this slaughter feast, which can also be regarded as adding precious battle power. After 2 years of hard training, Uchiha Sasuke's strength has been tortured and tested. All kinds of crazy training were almost self-harming. Kabuto saw this in his eyes and touched his heart. Although he didn't like Sasuke very much, he really couldn't compare to his crazy pursuit of strength. It is also undeniable that the reason why Sasuke's strength is so fast is inseparable from his training day after day. Driven by hatred, Sasuke is no longer the young boy. Now he is definitely a ferocious beast who kills without blinking, a beast like Orochimaru. Ignorant boy, his ambition is quite big, but it's not proportional to his strength. Recalling Sasuke's arrogant words before, Orochimaru couldn't help but shake his head. He expressed that he was not optimistic about Sasuke's ambition. He is very strong now, but the target of his revenge, Dustless and Itachi, is really stronger. The upcoming mission to ambush the Akatsuki organization can see his true strength. Sasori of the Red Sand and Deidara are not easy to deal with. Not to mention Dustless and Itachi, who are stronger than Sasori and Deidara. I understand Sasuke's revenge on Itachi, but this seems to have nothing to do with Uchiha Dustless. Speaking of Sasuke's previous fierce words, Kabuto was very puzzled. After all, the people who killed Uchiha and Sasuke's parents were all done by Itachi himself. It had nothing to do with Dustless. No one knows that all this originated from Dustless's instigation. It's very simple. Snake Eyes emitted a wise light. Orochimaru's voice was hoarse, like a snake's cry. He looked indifferent and whispered, Dustless didn't personally destroy the Uchiha clan, but he went with Itachi and there is suspicion of collusion. Sasuke is that kind of person. Itachi has been arrested by him, and Dustless, who is suspected of colluding with Itachi, naturally has to be brought along. With a mocking smile on his face, Orochimaru suddenly shook his head and said, It's a pity that Sasuke is too naive. He doesn't have the same eyes as Dustless and Itachi. Challenging them is just a dead end. He doesn't understand the horror of Mangekyo Sharingan. Orochimaru wasn't optimistic about Uchiha Sasuke. This wasn't nonsense. He challenged both Dustless and Itachi with Mangekyo Sharingan and ended in failure. In particular, Dustless's eye power is above Itachi's. It's impossible for Sasuke to shake Mangekyo Sharingan with a mere 3-tomo Sharingan. Kabuto nodded in agreement and agreed with Orochimaru's statement. Sasuke is indeed the kind of overbearing person. For him, killing people doesn't necessarily need an excuse. For people like Dustless, their existence is the biggest mistake. Although Dustless didn't destroy Uchiha to some extent, he was also a participant. Itachi killed all the Uchiha clansmen. Only Dustless and Sasuke were alive, which explained everything. What's the situation on Konoha's side, Kabuto? The topic suddenly changed and Orochimaru asked Kabuto. Akatsuki, Sasori and Deidara both returned to the scene. It would be a pity if Konoha's side wasn't strong enough. It seems that Team 7 is still led by the original Kakashi. But because Kakashi was seriously injured when rescuing Gaara, he was temporarily replaced by an Umbu ninja named Yamato. After Sasuke's defection, there was a shortage of personnel in Team 7. Shimura Danzo took this opportunity to insert a root ninja named Sasai. Touching his eyes, there was a light of wisdom in his eyes as he recalled the information he got from Konoha and answered truthfully. Danzo? After all these years, his ambition is still not small. Orochimaru sneered when he heard this. Since the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki appeared in Konoha, he began to pull the Jinchuriki into his root division. Until now, Shimura Danzo still had such an idea. That QB brat is enough to make those two masters busy. With a gloating smile on his face, Orochimaru smiled fiercely. He didn't have a good impression of the Akatsuki's group. This time he might use the QB's hand to kill those two masters. Both sides heard the news and without exception, they all came to investigate the bijou. Uzumaki Naruto hated the Akatsuki very much. Although Gaara was resurrected, Chiyo's soul was also wandering in the sky. It seems that Deidara and Sasori didn't encounter Nibi, but instead encountered Kyuubi's miserable appearance. Orochimaru showed a happy smile. His life in Akatsuki was the lowest period of his life. It was because he lost to pain that he was forced to join the Akatsuki. This is all thanks to you, Kabuto. Orochimaru's eyes fell on Kabuto, and he rarely praised him. This time he mainly used Kabuto's identity as a double spy, otherwise Sasori would never be in the ravine. Now, Kabuto was Orochimaru's loyal subordinate and an undercover agent sent by Sasori, but Sasori didn't know that Kabuto had completely turned to Orochimaru's side many years ago. Orochimaru-sama, you're too kind. Kabuto was flattered. He didn't feel the slightest joy, instead he was panicking. Orochimaru's current appearance was very trusting of him. Orochimaru's temperament was very changeable. When he fought with Dustless, Orochimaru used Kimimaro to block Dustless's Yin-Yang release attack. Kabuto couldn't forget that. Kimimaro's loyalty to Orochimaru was well known, but even so he still used him as a shield. Sometimes he would even dream that it was him. Chapter 256. Dustless, who was far away in the Rain Village, naturally got the news, and so did Pain, who was anxious to gather all the members of the Akatsuki organization. Uzumaki Nagato seems to like darkness. No matter when and where, he always appears in the depths of the dark cave, which always gives people a feeling of not being able to see the light. There is news about the second last. Pain couldn't help but speak first with a slightly trembling tone. Although he tried to hide his calmness and keep himself as calm as usual, it could still be seen from his eyes that Pain's heart was not calm, and he was even doubtful and full of doubts. When he was worried about not being able to find the second last, a pie suddenly fell from the sky. Pain didn't doubt that it was fake, especially since the source of the information was the former traitor Orochimaru's subordinates. The snake that spits out disgusting things from its mouth is very cunning, be careful. Black Zetsu said hoarsely with doubt in his tone. He also expressed his disbelief. He felt that this was a trap set by Orochimaru. He was very wary of Orochimaru, who was as cunning as a fox. What is the truth we will know when we find out. Seeing that everyone doubted the source of his information, Sasori had to stand up. Kabuto is the secret chest that I arranged around Orochimaru in the early years. If the facts are as he said, then it's good, but if not? In the end, Sasori was murderous and his eyes were shining with a piercing cold light. The meaning was self-evident. As long as Kabuto dared to deceive him, he would definitely be torn into pieces. This should be the conspiracy of Orochimaru and Kabuto. They want to lead us into a trap. Orochimaru wants to take the Nibi's Jinchuriki from the monsters of the Cloud Village. He still needs 10 years of effort. Squinting his eyes after thinking for a while, Dustless said thoughtfully. Orochimaru's strength is good, but if he wants to take the tailed beast from the Cloud Village, which is full of strong people, he is too far away. The Cloud Village is not a sheep pen and Orochimaru is not a wolf. It's true. Itachi nodded in agreement, rarely agreeing with Dustless's statement. Obviously he also had doubts. Everyone knew that Nibi was the Jinchuriki of the Cloud Hidden Village, and there was no reason for her to be taken away by people like Orochimaru. And even if it was taken away, according to the temper of the Cloud Hidden Village, they would bring a large group of ninjas to kill Orochimaru in Otogekyure. But it doesn't matter. Even without the existence of Second Last, we can take the opportunity to get rid of the traitor Orochimaru, Pain said indifferently with a cold look in his eyes. Those who betray the Akatsuki will definitely not end well. Upon hearing his words, Dustless nodded slightly. He knew that Pain had already made up his mind. Even without the existence of the Second Last, he could still get rid of the traitor Orochimaru. If the Second Last Jinchuriki really existed, it would naturally be killing two birds with one stone. Do is a spy I sent over. He only knows me and doesn't know anyone else. It's useless for anyone else to meet with him. It's most suitable for me to meet with him. Sasori of the Red Sand said. His words revealed his ruthlessness. Those who dared to betray him would definitely not have a good end. This was also where Sasori of the Red Sand was brilliant. He was able to plant his own spies in other people's places. His ability to prepare for a rainy day was not just for show. You and Deidara will go and solve it. If there is a trace of second last, catch it immediately. If not, I should have killed Orochimaru myself, but it seems that this task can only be handed over to you, Sasori and Deidara. Staring at Sasori, Pain continued in a deep voice. Orochimaru is very cunning. Don't let him take advantage of the loophole. Be sure to get rid of him. It should be Orochimaru's trick. He doesn't have the ability to catch the tailed beast, and he doesn't dare to think about the tailed beast. He used to be a member of the Akatsuki. He should understand the consequences of this. After the temporary meeting was over, Dustless and Zetsu were alone in the dark environment. White Zetsu stared at Dustless's back and said with certainty, "Let him go." As Pain said, "It's not bad to get rid of Orochimaru, the fish that escaped the net." Most of the buildings in the rain village were made of steel, which was exquisite in the hazy night rain. Looking at the village in the drizzle, Dustless's heart was like a still water, unusually calm, and at the same time, he added a sentence in his heart. Just if the two of them can eliminate Orochimaru. In any case, Otogekyure in the Land of Sound is also Orochimaru's territory. Although it was good for a short time, it was funny to be killed by Sasori and Deidara, who were exposed under their eyes. From the beginning, Dustless didn't think that Sasori and Deidara were Orochimaru. Sasori and Deidara regarded Orochimaru as a fat sheep, and Orochimaru probably also regarded them as fat sheep. At the same time, Konoha's ninja also acted in a hurry. As the fifth Hokage, Tsunade Senju immediately sent the reformed Team 7 to march towards Orochimaru's territory. Uzumaki Naruto and the newly joined Sasai also didn't deal with each other. He had an inexplicable hatred for the newly joined Sasai. He always felt that Sasuke's position was stolen by this guy. Of course, Sasai also didn't like Uzumaki Naruto. Living in the root department, he witnessed the ugliness of human nature since he was a child. He was used to the darkness of the world. He scoffed at Naruto's so-called fetters and had an attitude of complete disdain. Naruto was a person who valued feelings very much. As a result, it naturally determined the situation between Naruto and Sasai. The new Team 7 leader, Yamato, also had a headache. The environment created a change in people's temperament. Sasai and Naruto were not the kind of people who could casually listen to each other's advice, and naturally they decided to have conflicts all the way. Even the two had a big fight midway. If it weren't for Haruno Sakura and Yamato intercepting them, both of them would have been beaten black and blue. In fact, on the first day Sasai and Naruto met, they had a fierce intimate contact. Chapter 257. 7 days later, the sky was chilly and the biting cold wind was bone-piercing. It was a little chilly, causing people to involuntarily shrink their bodies. When they looked up, the clear sky suddenly turned gloomy, giving people a feeling of eeriness and terror. It was abnormally oppressive. The whistling cold wind raged through the sky, shaking the earth. Ring, ring, ring. In the cold wind there was a pleasant and crisp sound of bells. The monotonous sky finally became lively. The sound of bells lingered for a long time, moving forward against the wind. Sasori Dage, is the land in front of us the land of rice? It is really a place suitable for Orochimaru to live. The strong wind swept past, and the black robe embroidered with red clouds was blown as if it was going to burst. Feeling the bamboo hat on his head, he quickly pressed it down. Deidara said angrily, "Snakes really like to camp in this wet place. This time we will set fire to his snake nest. The art of instant will light up the entire Otogekyure." Looking ahead, there was a green grassland with moist and fertile soil. There is no doubt that snake creatures like this environment. Deidara looked gloomy and murderous. Deidara hated his predecessor Orochimaru very much, especially the cold creatures like snakes, which were the opposite of his elegant art. "Shut up, Deidara. If you underestimate Orochimaru you will fail miserably." Sasori glanced at Deidara coldly. His tone was indisputable. He used to team up with Orochimaru. He knew Orochimaru's character too well. It was not a trap. Once it was a trap, it was definitely the most deadly type. It was impossible to let go of the prey bitten by a snake. If the opponent was Orochimaru, it was even more impossible to let go. It seems that he is here. Suddenly, a thin figure entered Sasori's perception range. Slowly opening his eyes, he could clearly see the figure in the distance. Sasori of the Red Sand seemed a little angry. He was most annoyed when others asked him to wait for him or he was waiting for others. "Is that the kid? He doesn't look like a good guy." His line of sight followed Scorpion's gaze, and what he saw was Do with a slight smile. Deladia frowned. Do's smile gave him the feeling of a smiling tiger. He was like a venomous snake hiding in the dark. No one knew when he would bite your neck. Scorpion looked faintly at the sudden appearance of Do. His eyes flashed a strange color and then walked over calmly. His body was particularly strong under the attack of the cold wind. His expression was light, very strong, fearless, and there was a feeling of loneliness at the top. Let's see what a small fry like you can do. Seeing Scorpion's back getting farther and farther away, Deadale sneered and followed him. Both of them exuded an indescribable aura. Their thin and slender figures were not worth mentioning. They looked very small under the reflection of the sky. Deadale and Scorpion, who were bathed in the wind and waves, showed signs of being blown away by the wind. They looked very fragile like willow branches. In the face of the strong cold wind, they could only resign themselves to it. Are these two people really from Akatsuki? It seems a bit suspicious. The Odogakure ninja who was secretly ambushing couldn't help but be suspicious. The unbearable appearance of dancing in the wind really made them unable to associate the words, peerless master. These two guys. What a powerful aura. Staring at the two figures coming towards him, Yakushi Kabuto took a deep breath and muttered to himself in horror. The Odogakure ninja in the distance may not feel it, but he could feel the oppression deep in his soul. There was no need for deliberate decoration, just a casual glance, and Kabuto had a sense of shuddering panic. There was an inexplicable strange sense of oppression around his body. It seemed that even the space was distorted. There were thousands of sharp kunai and other hostility hidden in it. As long as Kabuto made a little rash move, he would be dismembered on the spot. What the hell? Shaking his head without a trace, Kabuto's eyes became clear. That was just an illusion, a demon technique, not real. Even if the killing intent is not deliberately released, just their momentum alone makes me feel scared. This feeling has only been felt by Orochimaru-sama before. It's worthy of being the monsters who teamed up with Orochimaru in the past. He quickly converged his mind. After following Orochimaru for so many years, Kabuto was also a person who had experienced great storms. His heart was like still water and his face was calm. After several years of practice, Kabuto was no longer the rookie he used to be. Sasori-sama. After a few moments, Sasori, who was hiding in the puppet, finally came to Kabuto. Kabuto quickly half-knelt on the ground and didn't even dare to breathe. Kabuto looked cautious and he didn't even dare to look up at Sasori. He quietly half-knelt on the ground, waiting for the latter's question. The whereabouts of Jinchuriki, and Orochimaru's current situation. Sasori spoke quickly and went straight to the topic. He looked down at Kabuto half-knelt on the ground. His tone was extremely cold. His hoarse voice was like steel grinding, making people shudder. After that, Sasori's violent murderous aura enveloped Kabuto's body. The boundless murderous aura seemed like a nightmare, filling Kabuto's mind and disturbing his spiritual thinking. Even Kabuto's carefully prepared trap was twisted by this sudden murderous aura and disappeared. Looking up at Sasori's cold pupils, his heart couldn't help but sink. He suddenly remembered the horror of Sasori, and the carefully crafted lie also disappeared. He looked at Sasori with fear. It was an instinctive fear and any person would be afraid of death. This is natural. The cold wind continued to howl, roaring unscrupulously in the sky, emitting an endless pressure. Dark clouds rolled in the sky and something seemed to be bursting out from the clouds, constantly expanding. The entire void was filled with an indescribable desolation. Kiki. Only two people came. That group of people is really bold and fat. In the dark cave, Orochimaru was so angry that he laughed gloomily. Looking at the backs of the people who had left before, his face was as terrifying as a ghost. With his dead skin and appearance, it was very scary. Having said that, Orochimaru was more angry. People are arrogant, and Orochimaru is no exception. He used to be one of the Sannin. His strength is beyond doubt. He is definitely a Kage-level powerhouse. If it weren't for the sudden emergence of Minato, he would probably be the fourth Hokage. Although the plan couldn't keep up with the changes, and the final Hokage was taken away by Minato, it also confirmed Orochimaru's strength. Damn, Akatsuki organization, today I will let you know what will happen if you underestimate me, Lung Kuan Orochimaru. Those two art masters will die today. With a creepy smile on his mouth, Orochimaru said fiercely with a fierce tone. He spent countless efforts to construct the perfect plan and two people came. This was a slap in his face. Especially in Orochimaru's own territory, he completely occupied the absolute advantage of time, place and people. But this is also good. If Sasori and Deidara die, Pain should have a headache. licking his dry lips, revealing his stinky purple tongue. Orochimaru's snake pupils emitted an incomparably dangerous light, turning into a beast that was about to devour its prey. Orochimaru said in a somewhat hysterical and hoarse voice. Orochimaru wanted to let Akatsuki understand what kind of painful price he would have to pay for underestimating him. As for whether Akatsuki will retaliate, Orochimaru doesn't care. Anyway, his Odogekure is only a temporary base. He can spend a little time to build another one or even a larger one. It seems that those two guys have come. A black figure quickly came over and an indifferent voice sounded. Looking up, it was Sasuke with a cold face with a straight tachi on his waist. At first glance, it was not an ordinary thing. It's rare to see you like this. When Sasuke appeared, the look on Orochimaru's face was completely restrained, but Sasuke, with excellent dynamic vision, still caught the ferocious look that hasn't dissipated yet. Snakes are calm creatures. If they go crazy, they will naturally go all out. Orochimaru smiled indifferently and said calmly. Perhaps Sasuke hasn't seen Orochimaru's desperate fight, but Dustless has seen the madness of this snake uncle in order to recapture the coffins of several Hokage. Any creature, when faced with a threat, will show the instinctive bloodthirst in its body, let alone the cruel Orochimaru. But we seem to be underestimated. Sasuke-kun, only 2 people came. I thought that the idiot, zombie duo, would also come, and we will take the opportunity to clean them up. This is equivalent to breaking Akatsuki's left and right arms. Thinking of this, Orochimaru's mind immediately burst into flames, and the feeling of being underestimated became stronger and stronger. He clenched his fists, and his tone was cold as if it could freeze time and space. Well, let's let the group of arrogant monsters of the Akatsuki organization see the big gift I prepared for them. In an instant, Orochimaru strangely calmed down, and his tone became even more indifferent and profound. With a smile on his face, he gave people a feeling of a villain intoxicated by success. The reason why he could be so crazy was because the pressure of Akatsuki was too great, so much so that Orochimaru had no choice but to find another way, and use special means to deal with those monsters with strength similar to tailed beasts. In fact, since Orochimaru joined Akatsuki, after seeing Pain's ambition to conquer the world, Orochimaru secretly began to collect his own cards to deal with Akatsuki at a certain time in the future. Especially after being defeated by Dustless last time, Orochimaru's desire to deal with Akatsuki was even higher. He was not the kind of person who would submit to others. He joined Akatsuki just to use Akatsuki to achieve his own goals. Chapter 259. His dark hair cascaded down like a waterfall and casually draped over his shoulders. His pale face reflected a cold luster. There was no impurity on his face. If you ignore Orochimaru's gloomy aura, his long tongue that stuck out from time to time, and his eyes that flickered with viciousness, his facial features could be considered handsome, although he was a little feminine. Sasuke looked at Orochimaru suspiciously, and his eyebrows were tightly knitted together. Although he was very disdainful of this old guy, he had to admit that Orochimaru did have extraordinary strengths, and some of his abilities were really beyond his reach. At least, Orochimaru's life experience was not comparable to him. It may be related to those mysterious corpses. A light flashed in his mind, Sasuke secretly thought. Orochimaru has been searching the corpses of the major ninja villages all over the world for the past 2 years. He didn't know the specific use. However, according to Orochimaru, who takes one step at a time, no matter what he does, it's a step-by-step process. The corpses that he spent years collecting will never be useless. Looking at Orochimaru, Sasuke didn't intend to ask more. The former just closed his eyes and hummed softly. Obviously, he was brewing some kind of conspiracy. Boom, boom, boom. The deafening explosion suddenly resounded through the sky, and the whole earth suddenly trembled, splashing countless dust. Orochimaru, who was meditating, was also awakened by this violent explosion. Kabuto has started. Squinting his eyes, endless killing intent and chilling coldness shot out from his eyes. Orochimaru's tone was strangely calm, and his eyes fell on Uchiha Sasuke. The meaning in his snake eyes was self-evident. If Sasuke wants to deal with the Akatsuki, this is undoubtedly the best opportunity. A cold light gathered on his handsome face. Without waiting for Orochimaru to speak, Sasuke's body turned into an afterimage, and in the blink of an eye, he drilled into the void like a ghost and disappeared completely. It seems that the plan needs to be speeded up. This kid's strength has improved so fast, but this is not a good sign. Seeing Sasuke leave, Orochimaru's brows immediately became gloomy, and his body was surrounded by a cold mist. His pale face was even paler, condensing fine frost. The surrounding air was quickly sucked out as if it was suffocating. It was no different from a frozen corpse that had been preserved for many years. Sasuke's strength is getting stronger and stronger, which means that when devouring him in the future, it may be more difficult to deal with, and even unimaginable things are not impossible. The Uchiha clan is the kind of clan that creates miracles. If you look at them from an ordinary point of view, they will definitely end up very miserable. Devour him as soon as possible. A fierce light flashed in Orochimaru's eyes, and he made a decision in his heart. After this matter is resolved, he must snatch Uchiha's body, and he can't wait for him to awaken his Manjikyu Sharingan. When Sasuke opens his Manjikyu Sharingan, Orochimaru might not be his opponent. But before that, we should first deal with those two art masters. Orochimaru went straight into the dark tunnel on the right side. It was like a hell isolated from the rest of the world. It was filled with desolation, and Orochimaru soon disappeared. Hey. Are you kidding me, Sasori Dage? You are so stupid. I know that these snakes are not good, and now I'm really tricked. In the tall canyon surrounded by mountains, Deidara and Sasori stood side by side, and Kabuto, who was not far in front of them, were wrapped in a huge transparent barrier. Shut up. Sasori scolded Deidara angrily, cursing this kid. Before, Deidara kept urging them to hurry up and catch the bijou. Now, seeing that the situation is not good, he suddenly began to shirk responsibility. Deidara just smiled and shrugged helplessly, indicating that he was just joking. Entertainment, the current tense atmosphere. But then again, that restless evil chakra just now. Deidara's face suddenly became gloomy. The violent negative chakra that suddenly appeared just now was definitely the bijou's, otherwise, he and Sasori would not have foolishly entered this valley. Yes, although I don't know how it happened, it is indeed the chakra of the bijou. Looking around, staring at the powerful barrier, Sasori also said in a hoarse voice. After many years of dealing with the bijou, they naturally knew the chakra of the bijou. Just now, they did feel the existence of the chakra of the bijou, but just when they entered the valley, the huge barrier fell from the sky. His fierce eyes fell on Kabuto, who was also trapped in the barrier. Sasori laughed and said sarcastically, "It seems that you have been abandoned by Orochimaru. Don't worry, I will not be so cruel to abandon you. Although your strength is a bit inferior, I will make you into a puppet to accompany me." Sasori roared at the end. A mere pawn dared to betray him. It was simply outrageous. Especially when this insignificant pawn actually dared to scheme against his master. Sasori-sama seems to have not figured out the situation. In the face of Sasori's threat, Kabuto just smiled indifferently. Although the three were covered by the powerful barrier 4 purple flames array, at the same time, he did not worry too much. Instead, his bright eyes stared at Deidara and Sasori, and his eyes flashed from time to time like a hunter seeing his prey. "I have raised an ingrate, Sasori." While ridiculing Sasori, Deidara looked fierce. No matter who it was, betrayal was extremely hated. This was one of the human nature. "It seems that there is trouble, but that was indeed the chakra of the bijou. Where did Orochimaru, this bastard, get the bijou?" Clenching his fists slightly, Dustless secretly said in a deep voice. No wonder Sasori and Deidara would fall into the trap and follow Kabuto in the valley imprisoned by the 4 purple yang array, because the chakra that suddenly erupted just now was indeed a tailed beast. Chapter 260. Dustless couldn't help but be suspicious. There is no doubt that there are only 9 bijou in the world and there is no other bijou. Orochimaru has seen a lot of things over the years, but I underestimated him. There was a sudden flash of inspiration in his mind. The clouds and mist that blocked his eyes suddenly disappeared. Wu Chen immediately understood the cause of the matter. It seemed to be Kyuubi's chakra. How could he have Kyuubi's chakra? After a long silence, Black Zetsu immediately concluded that the violent orange chakra was definitely Kyuubi's, but what he didn't understand was why Kyuubi's chakra appeared in Orochimaru's hand. It is reasonable to say that there is no Kyuubi's chakra in the world. After Dustless attacked Konoha together with Obito, he forcibly used the Geto Mazo to extract Kyuubi's chakra, but because of Minato's interference, half of Kyuubi's chakra was sealed in the Geto Mazo's body, and the other half was in Uzumaki Naruto. And after that, Obito extracted Kyuubi's In attribute chakra. As for where he put it, only Obito himself knows. Is it? Suddenly raising his head and looking at the 2 figures that suddenly appeared in the barrier, Dustless's eyes flashed with understanding and said, "It turned out to be the 2 brothers." In the 4 purple flame array, 2 figures suddenly appeared, or rather they came out from the ground. These 2 people were tall and muscular, with a streamlined beauty full of explosive power. One of them had blonde hair and the word gold was engraved on his shoulder, and the other had silver hair, and the word silver was engraved on his shoulder. They were the two brothers Jinjiao and Yinjiao who have been dead for many years. Orochimaru is quite good, he is so willing to give him the Edo Tensei, such a brilliant ninjutsu. Staring at the two lifeless brothers and their black skin, faint ripples appeared in his deep black eyes. Dustless was sure that this was the so-called Edo Tensei. The only thing he didn't expect was that Orochimaru would give this ninjutsu to Kabuto. The reason why Kyuubi's chakra exists in their bodies is because they devoured Kyuubi's flesh in the past, so Kyuubi's chakra exists in their bodies. But they didn't explode because of Kyuubi's huge power, their strength seems to be good. Dustless said, and then he suddenly remembered that the Edo Tensei army of the Fourth Shinobi World War was all from Kabuchi. Orochimaru probably didn't expect that he would be devoured by Sasuke, and the corpses Thatsu's corpses collected over the years fell into Kabuto's. For 2 years I'm afraid that Orochimaru has been collecting these corpses, and the number is probably not small. I really can't underestimate him. Black Zetsu cautiously stared at the two brothers in the barrier, and his hoarse voice was heavy. There are countless strong corpses in this world. Not to mention the other ninja villages, the number of powerful ninjas in the 5 major ninja villages is extremely large. If they gather together, it is definitely enough to subvert the world. At the same time, a strange light flashed in Black Zetsu's eyes. Although it was very obscure and fleeting, Dustless, who has been secretly staring at Black Zetsu, still saw it clearly. This old guy really has Uchiha Madara's body in his hands. No wonder I couldn't find it after so many years. Does he want to give Madara's body to the enemy? Sneering in his heart, Dustless looked at Black Zetsu calmly. This old guy is very careful and he is the most dangerous existence. However, it hasn't reached the situation yet, and Dustless is too lazy to pay attention to him. Sasori and Deidara are not easy to deal with this time. The two monsters in the Cloud Village are not easy to deal with, and according to the current situation, Orochimaru should have more than just a few corpses. He should also have the corpses of the previous generations of Kage. Thinking quickly, Dustless still remembered that during the Fourth Shinobi World War, Kabuto, who was fused with Orochimaru, could summon a large number of undead from another world, which played a decisive role in the war. These two masters will be busy, I hope they won't be killed. White Zetsu said with a frivolous tone, with a hint of gloating, but his expression looked quite calm. Obviously he didn't worry about the life and death of Sasori and Deidara. Because Dustless's body is here, Sasori and Deidara can't be in danger. Let's go, Zetsu. Glancing faintly at the two brothers, Dustless's eyes were filled with disappointment. Since it is not Nibi, there is no need to stay here. Dustless doesn't care about the weak chakra of Gold Horn and Silver Horn at all, not to mention that the Kyuubi attribute chakra is in the hands of Obito. Let's go, but Sasori and Deidara. Speaking of this, Black Zetsu looked at Dustless in astonishment. This is Oto Geikure surrounded by strong enemies, and there may be a large number of ninjas after the Edo Tensei. Deidara and Sasori are in danger. Dustless's current meaning seemed to be abandoning Dead Ale and Scorpion. Zetsu, you have been clear about one thing from beginning to end. The calm eyes fell on Black and White Zetsu who were stunned. Dustless looked at the fight that had started in the enchantment and said faintly, "This is the cruelty of this world. The survival of the fittest. Dead Ale and Scorpion can escape this disaster, which means that they are worthy of our use. If they can't pass, they can only stop here." The indifferent and ruthless voice spread out as if he was talking about something not worth mentioning. Dustless's tone was very flat, without any emotional fluctuations. This is the real him. Once he decides that someone has lost their value, he will throw them away like trash. Even if this chess piece is very powerful, he is no exception. Facing Dustless's calm face, Black Zetsu's heart was particularly depressed. At this moment, Dustless is the real Uchiha Dustless. Chapter 261. Wu Chen's deep black eyes indifferently looked at the void in front of him. His face was expressionless. Life in the world should be straightforward. It would be ridiculous to limit one's thinking for the so-called plan. It's okay to save people, but it also requires the other party to pay the price for his rescue. Dustless doesn't think that Sasori and Deidara in front of him are worthy of his help. They're just pawns, so what if they die? Dustless is not the captain of the fire brigade where the fire is put out. You're really cold, Dustless-sama? White Zetsu spoke without thinking. Compared to Black Zetsu, White Zetsu's thoughts were much simpler. At least, compared to Black Zetsu, it was much simpler. Your master and I are the same kind of person, Zetsu. Dustless glanced at White Zetsu faintly. The so-called master is naturally Uchiha Madara. Dustless thinks that compared with Uchiha Madara, his dead partner, he feels much purer and kinder. White Zetsu just shrugged. This is indeed a fact, because the steps Dustless is taking now are still according to Madara's Eye of the Moon plan. Boring Orochimaru, this old guy's abacus is loud, but in the end it's all in vain. Dustless stared at Jinjio and Jinjio in the barrier in front of him and said faintly, after spending so much effort, the person who benefits in the end is still Kabuto. What makes Dustless speechless is that Black Zetsu is suspected of colluding with the enemy. In order to achieve the purpose of resurrecting Otsutsuki Kagaya, he will do anything. His mind can't be estimated by common sense. So far, but that old guy Orochimaru doesn't seem to show up. Dustless frowned without a trace and wondered. As the leader of Oto Geikure, Orochimaru, the most important leader, hasn't come to the stage yet. It's very suspicious. There's no need to think about what this old guy is planning. I hope you two can come back to life. Glancing at Deadale and Scorpion from the corner of his eyes, Dustless immediately turned around and left. When he was about to turn around and leave, a black afterimage suddenly rushed toward him. It was extremely fast, like lightning with a faint dazzling light. So fast. A faint ripple appeared in his calm pupils. Dustless smiled in relief. He calmly stared at the sound that came from afar, and a contemptuous smile appeared on his face. Dustless stood there calmly, his entire body exuding a noble aura. He gazed indifferently at the black shadow that was speeding towards him. His deep gaze suddenly turned piercingly cold. The black shadow's speed instantly slowed down by 100 times. In Dustless's eyes, it was like a crawling tortoise. So, a sharp and cold light fell from the sky. The cold light of the blade was aimed at Dustless's head. The cold light passed through the air, and the Tachi was mercilessly chopped down with full force. Flaws, slow speed. Did you lose your skills because of anger? My foolish brother. Hate, escape, complain about your cursed fate, you tragic child who is about to be crushed to death by the gears of fate. I will personally take your head and awaken my Mangekyo Sharingan. Chapter 262. Uchiha Sasuke's eyes glowed as he looked at Dustless greedily. In his eyes, Dustless at this moment was like a fat meat waiting to be slaughtered. It was a shortcut for him to open his Mangekyo Sharingan. Holding the slender Tachi in his hand, Sasuke's eyes turned blood red, and his cold and emotionless face was reflected on the Tachi. There was no doubt that he really wanted to kill Sasuke. It's really rare to see such a crazy kid. You're betting your life on this duel, boy. White Zetsu looked at Sasuke in astonishment. His eyes flashed with sarcasm. He really didn't know if this guy was too arrogant or too confident in his own strength. In his eyes, Sasuke's words were nothing more than self-humiliation. If Dustless was so easy to kill, he would have been killed during the Third World War. How could Sasuke, who only opened 3 tomo, be able to kill him? You know that opening Mangekyo is to kill your loved ones. It seems that Itachi told you a lot of things. For Sasuke's previous arrogant remarks, Dustless just smiled and didn't care about it. After all, everyone had a young and frivolous time. But you said a lot of nonsense. Dustless's calm expression froze. The corners of his mouth gently rose, his eyes narrowed, and he shrugged, showing a warm and brilliant smile. Sasuke directly vomited blood. However, it's useless. If you don't like it, come and kill me. I promise I won't run. After that, Dustless looked at Sasuke with a frivolous expression. The smile on his mouth was full of provocation, indicating that Sasuke didn't need to hold back. A mere 3 tomo Sharingan wasn't worthy of Dustless's attention. The gap between them was like the sky and the earth. They were not on the same level and the dimension couldn't be touched. Sasuke heard the words and stared at Dustless with an even more unfriendly face. The murderous aura spread out, and the temperature dropped to the freezing point. His body moved, and the chakra all over his body gathered at the tip of his feet. The speed was exerted to the limit of the body. In just a blink of an eye, he came to Dustless's side. His katana passed through Dustless's body, but it was still directly nullified by the elementalization. It's useless, your weak attack has no effect on me. Golden light gathered on the tip of his feet, and Dustless jumped up and kicked toward Sasuke. The powerful force was enough to tear the mountain. His pupils suddenly shrank from the kick's kick. Sasuke's powerful enough to crush him. He didn't hesitate to block. Boom. Even with the katana's power, Sasuke's body's too. The speed is even faster than before. The Uchiha clan is really a monster. Black Zetsu looked with interest at Sasuke, who was easily kicked away. Just a moment ago, Sasuke's speed and katana strength improved. It can be seen that his anger has calmed down and turned into a beast concentrating on fighting. The Uchiha clan is the descendant of Rikudo. Their potential is definitely extraordinary, and they seem to have more advantages than Senju. Recalling the outstanding figures of the Uchiha clan, White Zetsu was surprised. As the descendant of Rikudo, the Uchiha clan's genes seem to be much stronger. During the Warring States period there were heroes like Madara and Izuna. Later there were people like Ibito and Shursui. Now, with Dustless and the other two brothers, such a luxurious lineup is fully worthy of the title of the most powerful clan. On the other hand, Senju is also full of talents, but only the two brothers Hashirama and Naidame, and the current fifth Hokage Tsunade, are good. Is that so? Maybe that's the case. The Uchiha clan is a naturally evil clan. Glancing at Black Zetsu, Dustless whispered. Black Zetsu, and White Zetsu were all created by Madara. Black Zetsu is actually Kagaya's will. Naturally, he knows that the Uchiha clan is the descendant of Rikudo Sennin. This kid's progress is really fast. How come all the good things are in the hands of these two brothers? Looking at Sasuke with jealousy, Dustless couldn't help but laugh at himself. If it weren't for the system, maybe he would have been killed by Itachi's simple, stupid brother. This guy is so terrifying. Wiping the blood stains from the corner of his mouth, Sasuke stood up and stared at Dustless. He secretly thought that if he doesn't use his trump card, this simple attack can't hurt Dustless at all. You must die. Gritting his teeth and glaring at Dustless, Sasuke's murderous aura became purer. His crazy training was not for today, but the enemy's strength made him feel powerless. He had to fight to the death and take out his biggest card. It was Itachi who killed them both. It has nothing to do with me, Sasuke. Why do you hold on to me like this? Dustless was helpless. This kid's thoughts were too rich. After a long time, he looked at Sasuke with his light eyes and suddenly said, "It seems that you seem to be lacking something, Sasuke." Lacking? Hearing this, White Zetsu was slightly stunned. His pupils dilated and he looked at Dustless inexplicably. He said incredulously, "Is it possible that Dustless-sama wants to teach this kid ninjutsu? This is helping the enemy. Of course it's to teach him how to be a man. This kid doesn't put me in his eyes at all. How can I let him go?" Rolling his eyes, Dustless said in a bad mood. At the same time he made up his mind to teach this arrogant kid a lesson. After the words fell, his expression suddenly became gloomy, and his eyes were particularly ferocious. A dazzling golden luster circled around his fingertips, and the tiny light penetrated through everything. Obviously he was serious. How to be a man. You don't seem to be qualified to talk about others. Black Zetsu and White Zetsu complained in their hearts. They secretly scolded Dustless for being shameless. His life was flawed, and he even said that he wanted to teach Uchiha Sasuke how to be a man. Chapter 263. Uchiha Sasuke was always in a state of tension. His handsome and resolute little face was full of caution, especially his three-tomo Sharingan locked on the light beam at his fingertips. The light beam seemed to be harmless, but in fact, it could easily penetrate any part of his body. Ignorant, you think you can defend against the impact of light by keeping your guard up? Ridiculous. Seeing Sasuke's expression, Dustless sneered again and secretly said, "Is it useful? Today I will let you, a country bumpkin who has always followed Orochimaru, widen your knowledge. Orochimaru is very strong, but there are many people who are stronger than Orochimaru." Laser. The thumb-sized light beam shot straight out, and almost in the blink of an eye, the bright light whistled and filled Sasuke's pupils. So fast. His eyes suddenly shrank. Sasuke didn't hesitate to choose to dodge sideways, but when he pulled back his left arm suddenly hurt, and his face suddenly turned pale, and the blood on his face was swallowed up and he was very weak. Puchi. Blood splashed in the air, and looking at it he saw that the golden straight luster penetrated Sasuke's arm, leaving a scorched thumb-sized hole, and the wound was still emitting white steam. "With your current speed you can't escape my attack." Looking at Sasuke lightly, Dustless said calmly. People's reaction can't be faster than light. Dustless's expression was leisurely and calm, full of confidence, and his eyes were like an ancient well, looking at Sasuke calmly, silently and invisibly mocking his weakness. Dustless's look was obviously saying, "I will stand here and not move. If you have the ability, come at me. There's a limit to how arrogant you can get. You can't even be considered a beginner." Seeing Sasuke's face full of unwillingness, Dustless sneered and mercilessly hit him and said, "Take off my head and open Manjikyu Sharingan, A waste like you is 100 years too early. It's you who is arrogant. Enduring the severe pain, Sasuke smiled at Dustless, and the suppressed hatred in his heart burst out in an instant, and even the pain in his arm disappeared in an instant. Katan, Great Fire Dragon Technique. Several fiery heads came out of Sasuke's mouth, opening their fiery red fangs. The dense blazing fangs could easily tear the human body into pieces, and the power was great. Little brat, how can this kind of ordinary ninjutsu work on Wuchen? Hopelessly locked Sasuke, a deep disappointment flashed in Black Zetsu's eyes. He sighed in his heart. He also expected Sasuke to beat up Dustless in the future. Now it seems a bit uncertain. They are not in the same dimension at all. Kid who likes strength but this kind of ninjutsu. Wu Chen's expression was natural as he stared at the fire worm without fear. This kind of fragile ninjutsu was not necessary for him to resist and there was no need to move. Whiz. At this moment the situation suddenly changed. The fire dragon heads that were about to attack turned and rushed into the depths of the endless void, and disappeared into the clouds as if they evaporated out of thin air. What is this kid thinking? Is it that jutsu? No, it's that jutsu. Squinting his eyes and looking at the dark depths of the void, Dustless thought, feeling the change in the weather in the depths of the void, and the uncertainty in his heart turned into certainty. His goal was not me from the beginning. With a sharp light in his eyes, Dustless seemed to see through the layers of the void for a moment, and the violent lightning elements gathered in the depths of the clouds were all in his eyes. The climate of the land of rice is extremely moist, and it is easy to rain. This kid now uses Katan to generate an updraft, and then the updraft generates cumulonimbus clouds and finally a thundercloud. This kid is not bad. Casting an appreciative look at Uchiha Sasuke, Dustless was not stingy with his praise. Whiz whiz whiz. In succession, several huge fireballs poured into the void and disappeared into the depths of the clouds, as if swallowed by the dark universe and merged into the sky. Buzz 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 buzz. After a while, the color of the gloomy dark sky became deeper and richer, like a coat of hell, revealing ominous, dyeing the entire sky with its color. Especially the silver light that was obscurely refracted from the depths of the clouds, it was enough to tear a person's soul. It was a gigantic thundercloud with lightning flashing around it. This jutsu has a large range. Looking at the large thundercloud in the sky, the coverage was almost a few thousand meters, and the bright lightning poured down from the ninth heaven, covering the entire earth. It's time to go. If we continue we will be affected. Staring at the large thundercloud in the sky, Black Zetsu cautiously said. He couldn't help but look at Sasuke in a new light. He didn't expect this kid to have such a trump card. I wanted to test his strength and then use this jutsu. But, at this point I can only fight. Fiercely squeezing his fists, Sasuke's eyes were replaced by ruthlessness and ferocity, and hysterical madness was beating in them. Although he didn't want to admit it, the reality was so cruel, and it was not something he could touch at the moment. He could only use his whole strength to fight with him once. Boom! An ear-piercing rumble resounded through the clouds, and the pitch-black night sky instantly became as bright as day. Looking up, in the depths of the void, countless bolts of lightning were rolling and surging, crackling as they resounded. Tens of thousands of rays of light gathered here with a great momentum, extending for several kilometers and covering the sky and the sun. It was as if the hand of a god had overturned the universe, and the sword was pointed to the 9 heavens, revealing a supreme power that could compete with the heavens and the earth. Under the lightning, Dustless was alone, thin, and completely opposite to Sasuke, who controlled the lightning and domineering. The hurricane raging in the sky stirred his messy hair back and forth, and he was extremely fragile. Dustless was abandoned by the world, and half of his foot had already stepped into hell, and he could be destroyed in a snap of the fingers. Chapter 264. Lifting his eyes slightly, Dustless stared at the thunderclouds in the sky. His eyes were calm and fearless, as if he was the only one who was sober. His eyes then fell on Uchiha Sasuke's arrogant face. Seeing the former's face full of hostility, Dust's face was as usual. His indifference made Sasuke even angrier, feeling that he was being despised. Under the oppression of the majestic momentum, Dustless's performance was extremely casual. His face was indifferent and natural. Even the corners of his mouth outlined a soft arc. His smile was like a spring breeze, giving people a feeling of unusual elegance. Facing such a terrible scene, his performance was very leisurely, as if he was taking a walk in the tea garden after dinner, showing a look of enjoyment. Being in hell with a smile on his face, this is the best contempt and irony. I hope you can be so calm later. The corner of his mouth twitched fiercely, Sasuke said with a murderous voice. He was an extremely conceited and arrogant person. Now Dustless was like a lazy sunbathing, how could he not be angry? But what was that feeling just now? Sasuke's eyes flashed a little bit of clarity. Sasuke's heart was heavy, and the unprecedented feeling of hesitation just now made his firm heart waver. Dustless was obviously close, but it gave him a feeling of being far away. There was always a mysterious veil that prevented Sasuke from seeing through the essence of Dustless. This feeling of seeing a flower in the fog made him very uncomfortable and unacceptable. And the mysterious veil that prevented him from peeping at Dustless was strength. It was precisely because the gap between him and Dustless was too big that there was this feeling of being unable to detect. But Dustless saw through his life at a casual glance. Are you kidding me? His whole body suddenly flashed with a silver luster, and the previous thoughts in his heart instantly disappeared. Staring at Dustless, Sasuke's murderous intent was revealed. Chidori. Hum hum hum. The sharp and ear-piercing cries of birds resounded through the clouds, as if thousands of migratory birds were competing. The entire world was filled with the roar of birds. Looking around, Sasuke's hand was pulsing with a silver ball of light. It was all condensed from the power of thunder and lightning. It was so powerful that it could easily penetrate a small mountain. However, the most terrifying thing wasn't the domineering thousand birds. Instead, it was the sudden appearance of the lightning energy that made the thunderclouds in the sky become even more violent. It was like a stormy sea that violently rolled and surged. Ao ao ao. The roar of a wild beast was emitted from the thunderclouds. Immediately, a furious roar that contained the strength of lightning exploded apart, blowing away the dark clouds that covered the sky. The thunderclouds completely scattered. Chapter 265. With the roar of the giant thunder and lightning Kirin, the entire sky was clear again, and the cloudy sky also lost Sasuke's deterrence and returned to normal. Sasuke coldly looked at Dustless with his hands folded in front of him. There was no emotion in his eyes. In his world, perhaps since he defected from Konoha, the so-called humanity has been completely abandoned. At least, Sasuke thought that he had abandoned everything, including the fetters of the past. Accept the curse of fate as you struggle at death's door. The three Tomo Sharingan swayed with monstrous hostility, and Sasuke hissed hysterically. Perhaps it was because he spent 2 years with Orochimaru, the king of snakes. Unknowingly, Sasuke was also infected with Orochimaru's habits. Although he didn't lick his snake head like Orochimaru when he spoke, he still had the crazy viciousness of snakes. Suddenly, there was a burst of fainting in his mind, and Sasuke's thoughts were in a trance. Side effects. Although the power of this move is strong enough, the consumption of chakra is too much. Grasping his face tightly, Sasuke's pupils fell on Dustless, who was about to be swallowed by Kirin. Such a once-in-a-lifetime good show naturally couldn't be easily missed. Boom boom boom. The moment the giant dark blue beast touched the ground, the light all over its body rose to the limit. The power in its body seemed to be unable to bear it any longer, and it shattered with a bang. The energy fluctuations scattered in all directions swallowed everything around it, and it was a mess. What a large range, a duel between monsters. Zetsu, who was watching in the distance, looked at the destroyed and scorched ground around him, and couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. That ferocious giant blue head was terrifying in his eyes. Thunder and lightning is the most violent factor in the world, and its power is strong enough to destroy everything. To some extent, it is the incarnation of the will of heaven and earth. In the face of the irresistible sky, the hearts of all creatures will be filled with indescribable fear. It's a trembling from the depths of the soul, and it's impossible to give up. Even Ju was filled with fear when facing the armored monster with fangs. The reason was none other than the fact that even a god would be imprisoned under the firmament. Flowers bloom and wilt, the sun sets and rises from the east, all living things go through the cycle of reincarnation. This was the law of iron, and it was also a law that had never changed since ancient times. It was not something that could be escaped just because one said so. It seems like someone is here to mess things up. White Zetsu frowned and murmured in a low voice. He couldn't help but be speechless. Every time he would drop the ball at the critical moment. It seems to be Konoha's QB kid. You're really haunting me. Black Zu frowned as well. Every time this little brat seemed to accidentally come out to mess things up. Let's go to Lord Dustless first. It's not our place to worry. Staring at the destroyed and scorched ground, Black Zetsu decided. If QB comes, no one can stop him and no one can stop him. Only Dustless can subdue QB when he goes crazy. Especially when he sealed Gaara last time, Kyuubi and Uzumaki Naruto's body seemed to have reached a tacit understanding with him. He couldn't use Kyuubi's power at will, but he could borrow some chakra from Kyuubi. There's no reason for Kyuubi, an old fox who has lived for countless years, not to understand. After that, Ju's body sank into the soil and disappeared completely. It was as if he never appeared, and he escaped toward the place where Dustless and Sasuke were fighting. It's really a dangerous S-class ninjutsu. This beast's strength is not bad and he has some skills, but... In the huge pit filled with dust there was a burst of laughter. Without a doubt it was Dustless. Sure enough, he didn't get killed. Sasuke didn't feel any surprise when he heard this. He had witnessed Dustless's jutsu that ignored physical attacks. He originally wanted to use Kirin's large-scale jutsu to see Dustless's weakness, but now it seems that it was obviously a waste of effort. Especially when he heard the word, "but," from Dustless's mouth, Sasuke's heart was particularly angry. Every time Dustless said these two words, something happened that made him upset. A powerful beast is still a beast, and its essence hasn't changed. A harsher sound came out of the dust. Sure enough, it was as harsh as Sasuke had guessed before, and his calm heart instantly exploded. Just as he was about to step forward and fight with Dustless, a sense of powerlessness poured into his body, slowing down Sasuke's actions. A sense of exhaustion came into his mind, and his bones seemed to be taken away. He was very weak, and Sasuke realized that he didn't have much chakra left. Kakaka, at this moment, the ground at Dustless's feet suddenly cracked, and the figure wrapped in nepenthes was clearly visible. There was only one person in the whole world dressed like this, and there was no doubt that it was Zetsu. That kid Kyuubi came out again and there were several of his companions. Following Zetsu's gaze, he saw that Dustless's expression was normal, and his clothes were very clean and spotless, completely opposite to Uchiha Sasuke. I'm afraid it was Orochimaru who deceived him. Thinking of Orochimaru, who never appeared, Dustless's heart was unusually determined, and at the same time he asked calmly, "What's the situation of Sasori and Deidara? They didn't die together, right?" Thinking of Kabuto's Edo Tensei army, Dustless asked curiously. After all, Orochimaru collected a lot of strong corpses, and even some Kage corpses were all plundered by him. Even if Scorpion of the Red Sand and Dead Ale were killed, Dustless was not surprised. The Edo Tensei powerhouses had a great advantage. Although using charms to completely control the opponent's thoughts would reduce their strength, they were still very strong. Moreover, their numbers were as many as ants. Facing a tide-like pincer attack, Dustless did not think that Scorpion and Dead Ale would be safe and sound. Chapter 266. Thinking about the power of Edo Tensei, in the Fourth Shinobi World War, Kabuto even used this jutsu to change the situation. In the end, if Itachi didn't use Izanami in time, the world might have been completely subverted. Immortal and indestructible body, unlimited chakra, it was definitely a super nightmare existence. Kyuubi, don't worry about that kid Zetsu. After lowering his head and pondering for a while, Dustless's eyes flashed with a wise light, indicating that there's no need to care. Naruto is the kind of person who is extremely emotional, and Sasuke is his most important fetter. There's no doubt that the purpose is this kid. As for Sasuke and Deidara, Dustless didn't care. Deidara and Sasuke are in a bad situation. It's not only Jinjiao and Jinjio who are besieging them, but also the Kage of the 4 major shinobi villages. I'm afraid the final result. Speaking of this, Black Zetsu also fell silent. He couldn't help but sweat for Orochimaru's madness. If the outside world knows that the body of the Kage of their village was stolen, I'm afraid they will be furious. If they don't kill Orochimaru, I'm afraid they won't stop. At that time, it's not impossible for the 5 major shinobi villages to form an alliance to suppress Orochimaru. There's no need to care about the life and death of the chess pieces. It's their ability to come out alive. As for their death, they can only blame the 2 of them for not being skilled enough. Casually shooting a glance at Black Zetsu, Wuchen replied without the slightest ripple. Akatsuki was such a crazy organization, survival of the fittest, the road was their own choice, no one forced them. After that, Dustless's eyes were as sharp as a knife. He looked straight through the heavy sand and dust, and Sasuke's embarrassing scene was reflected in his eyes. Because of the process of creating the thundercloud before, this kid consumed a lot of chakra, and now he doesn't have much energy to fight with Dustless. He didn't have that strength and everything was because of Dustless. It's time to leave, the Nibi Jinchuriki is not here, it's just a trap. White Zetsu glanced at the huge barrier in the distance and couldn't help but shake his head. He was afraid that Deadale and Scorpion's fates were extremely miserable. At the same time, he looked at Dustless with a puzzled face and said, Sir Dustless doesn't seem to have the intention to kill him. Not only White Zetsu but Black Zetsu also looked at Dustless inexplicably. According to Dustless's strength, if he really wanted to kill Sasuke, he could kill him in seconds. Kill him? Why kill him? Smiling mysteriously, Wu Qin didn't answer and asked. Looking at Sasuke's eyes, he also had an indescribable color. His pupils faintly emitted green light, as if he was a terrifying beast. Next, I'll let you enjoy the most beautiful scene in the world. The majestic chakra scattered, and the rolling dust suddenly calmed down. The outside environment could be seen clearly. The line of sight swept straight ahead, and Sasuke could be clearly seen gasping for breath. White Zetsu stared at the scene that turned into a flat ground. His head was full of fog. Except for Sasuke himself, there was nothing left on the ravaged surface. It was all desolation, and there was nothing remarkable about it. Black Zetsu's gaze quietly stared at Sasuke without moving. After a while, his eyes flashed with understanding. Sasuke's face is the best beauty. Withdrawing his gaze from Sasuke's body, Black Zetsu said hoarsely. At the same time, he had a better understanding of Dustless's inner viciousness. The man in front of him usually looks gentle and friendly, but his heart is the most vicious kind. There are countless ways to kill a person, but if you choose the most painful way, many people will feel that torturing him to death and causing physical pain is miserable. In fact, it's not. Because there is a word called life is worse than death. Sasuke's face. White Zetsu was stunned when he heard the words. His eyes subconsciously looked at Sasuke's appearance, taking all his emotions into his eyes. Sasuke's face was full of complexity, and his pupils were staring at Dustless fiercely. All the changes in his emotions were exposed in front of him. The struggling eyes were undoubtedly filled with hatred. At the same time, there were thousands of unwillingness and hatred, including self-blame and shame as well as despair swirling around Sasuke's face. Yeah, Dustless-sama is really cruel. Black Zetsu said expressionlessly, killing people is just a matter of time. However, the reason why Dustless-sama let him live is to let Sasuke taste his inner feelings now and let Sasuke understand how fragile and powerless he is. An enemy with a blood feud is close at hand, but you can't avenge him. You can't even force the enemy to move a step from beginning to end. Is there anything more ironic than this? Black Zetsu took a deep breath and said, Dustless is really vicious. This is to let Sasuke live in the shadow of his own incompetence. If he can't kill Dustless, the haze in Sasuke's heart will not dissipate, forcing him to live in hatred for a lifetime, like a walking corpse. You can't tear down my stage like this, Black Zetsu. I feel that I'm a lot kinder. Doesn't he want to become stronger? I'm helping him, making him crazier in the future. Laughing at Black Zetsu's previous words, Dustless stared at Sasuke faintly, with a wicked smile on the corner of his mouth. At this moment it felt particularly terrifying. I just want to see Sasuke like this. He wants to kill me but can't. Dustless chuckled softly. His performance was extremely casual, making Black Zetsu and White Zetsu feel cold all over. Dustless's idea is indeed the same as Black Zetsu's. That is, he wants Sasuke to live in the shadow of his revenge forever, creating a nightmare that can't be broken without killing Dustless. For Dustless, he really needs to see such an ending for Sasuke. He also thinks that such a miserable end is very suitable for him. Chapter 267. With the disappearance of the thunderclouds, the sky gradually returned to clear, the scorching sun shone from the ninth heaven, and the whole earth was bathed in this gentle luster. Everything was recovering, showing signs of prosperity, but there were exceptions. Sasuke stared fiercely at Dustless, his sharp eyes were like knives. For the sudden appearance of Dustless, he couldn't wait to cut him into pieces, but strangely, his ferocious eyes seemed to be grateful. Is this kid's brain short-circuited by Dustless-sama's anger? Haku looked at Sasuke's sudden change in expression and couldn't help but be speechless. This change in mood was too exaggerated. Just now he was gnashing his teeth and wanted to drink his blood and eat his flesh. But now, his eyes were filled with gratitude. The speed of his face change was really unacceptable. Most likely. Black Zetsu stared at Sasuke, whose face was as usual in an instant, and sighed that Sasuke's face changed too fast. It's not what a human should look like. Before he was still a mortal enemy, but now he's full of gratitude. This kid. Dustless also looked at Sasuke curiously. This kid's instantaneous change was like coming back from the dead. Sasuke, who was still lifeless and full of despair, was now resurrected with full blood. Especially Sasuke's appearance, full of vitality, gave people the feeling that there was no difference between a cocoon and a rebirth. This isn't the legendary second male protagonist aura outbreak? What kind of shit is this? The corner of his mouth twitched. Dustless was extremely speechless. He secretly slandered in his heart, staring at the reborn Sasuke, and at the same time, there was a flash of light in his mind. I don't know if there will be a most powerful villain aura to resurrect me with full blood when I'm about to die. Second male protagonist aura? Hearing this strange word for the first time in his life, Black Zetsu looked at Dustless with curiosity, and said with great surprise, "Is this Sasuke's rebirth jutsu? I didn't expect there to be such a magical ninjutsu in the world. This unheard-of technique is indeed miraculous." White Zetsu also nodded in agreement. Although he didn't know what kind of mysterious ninjutsu it was, the jutsu that could bring Sasuke back to life must be very powerful. Dustless glanced at Ju. This was a common phrase in the 3D world. Naturally, the natives of the 2D world would not understand it, turning sadness into motivation. This is too illogical. Staring at Sasuke, Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Although his purpose was to make Sasuke stronger, and now Sasuke is becoming stronger as Dustless thought, but dark mode is becoming stronger just like Uzumaki Nagato and Obito, not like this. It's all thanks to you that I can see myself more clearly. As if seeing Dustless's confusion and entanglement, Sasuke had a smile on his face, but it was still as gloomy and indifferent as before. It was because of Dustless's sudden disruption that Sasuke realized that he was so fragile that he lost his goal in the darkness and stayed in the dark space forever. However, there is a saying that things will move in the opposite direction when they reach an extreme. Perhaps it was because of Dustless and Itachi's continuous pressure that Sasuke had a complete mental breakdown. It stands to reason that the people who have a mental breakdown should become walking dead. It's a miracle that Uchiha Sasuke can break out of the cocoon and be reborn. This kid's willpower is really strong. Shaking his head, Dustless's thousands of doubts in his heart suddenly disappeared, attributing this to Sasuke's perseverance. Although he was very uncomfortable with this kid, there is no doubt that his will is really strong. In other words, Sasuke can now correctly understand his past, which is the curse left by Itachi for him. But it's ridiculous to think that you can get rid of the shackles of fate and escape the curse of Uchiha's fate. Sasuke, it seems that I need to give you a more profound memory. I must leave a deeper mark in your heart that is difficult to erase. After that, Dustless's eyes rotated sharply, revealing the scarlet eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. The surging evil eye power was like a black hole in the Milky Way, swirling with irresistible force. What a strong eye power. Feeling that he was about to be swallowed by the dark power, and the whole person seemed to be swallowed by the violent eye power, Sasuke suddenly became confused, and without hesitation he took the Kusanagi sword and stabbed his calf. Puchi. Ruddy blood flowed down his calf, soaking the ground and penetrating into the ground, dyeing the soil purple-red. Sasuke, who was in a trance, regained his clarity and looked at Dustless coldly. His expression was particularly firm and unshakable. You are decisive and ruthless. Dustless frowned and followed his line of sight. He could clearly see Sasuke's pale face with sweat on his forehead. He looked like an old man in his twilight years who was about to fall down with a push. Sasuke is indeed a ruthless hero, indifferent to the enemy and even more ruthless to himself. Both Black Zetsu and White Zetsu nodded in agreement with Dustless's statement. Looking around, they saw that Sasuke's calf had been penetrated by the Kusanagi sword, and the person holding the sword was indeed himself. It was also because of the unprecedented pain that he could get rid of the shackles of Dustless's Sharingan. But Dustless Uchiha is really a monster. He didn't use any jutsu just now. Just the evil of Sharingan made Sasuke hallucinate. Black Zetsu secretly thought. His heart was unusually heavy. Zu once again emerged from the depths of the ground. She secretly clicked her tongue as she stared at the flame cage. This ability to control Amaterasu's form was extremely rare, but at the same time, it was also extremely dangerous. Could be used for both defense and attack at the same time. Unbeknownst to her, there was a more terrifying scene happening inside the dark flame cage. Dense black raindrops fell from the sky, like a rainstorm falling on the ground. A large number of white snakes were all burned to death. They didn't even have time to scream before they were annihilated directly. The place where Sasuke fainted was intact, like a second world, and the black raindrops naturally avoided it. In this way, that durable snake has finally died of old age. White Zetsu breathed a sigh of relief. Over the years, he didn't pay attention to Orochimaru's situation. He was already numb to this stinky, hard, and unkillable king of snakes. Who knows? Dustless retracted his gaze from the dark flame cage. He wasn't as optimistic as White Zetsu and gave an ambiguous answer. Through his powerful eye power, Dustless could clearly see the changes in Amaterasu's cage. Most of the white snakes were burned to death by Amaterasu, but there were still some fish that escaped the net, and one of them drilled into Uchiha Sasuke's body. Fortune and misfortune are interdependent, whether you live or die depends on fate. Seeing this, Dustless didn't say much. As for pulling out the white snake that entered Sasuke's body, it was even more impossible, and he had no interest in that. Zetsu, what about Sasori and Deidara? The huge perception spread out, taking in the situation within a radius of tens of kilometers. Dustless frowned and said, Deidara is fine, but Sasori's chakra seems to have disappeared. Was it killed? The eyes of the ancient well surged with unchanging ripples. Dustless's momentum was cold. Even if they had been in the same organization for several years, he didn't show the slightest emotion. It seems that there is still a weak chakra, but it won't last long. White Zetsu's face was expressionless, and there was no emotion in his heart. He had already guessed what Dustless was going to do. Black Zetsu also bowed his head in silence. After thousands of years of dormancy, he had witnessed too many life and death, and he had also thoroughly seen through the ugliness of human nature. Dustless was going to kill Sasori of the Red Sand himself. The previous 4 Purple Flames formation had been completely destroyed, and Deidara and Sasori had also escaped. Although the Edo Tensei army was destroyed by these two uncles countless times, it was still restored countless times. Sasori and Deidara had no advantage at all. Moreover, both of them had suffered extremely serious injuries. Deidara was fine. He rode the giant bird formed by the explosive clay and flew away, but Sasori, who was unable to move, was naturally unlucky. Chapter 269. The green grassland stretched as far as the eye could see, like a green gem permanently inlaid in the earth. It was beautiful, and the aura of nature was blowing on the face, making people feel relaxed and happy. In such a situation, anyone would feel sluggish and their mind would relax. Under the shade of the green tree, a red-haired young boy could be clearly seen. Bastard, damn Orochimaru, next time I will tear you to pieces, and that Kabuto who dared to plot against me. The red-haired boy's face was ferocious, and he cursed fiercely. His eyes were red and terrifying. Looking closely, the red-haired young boy was handsome, but his face was full of hostility, revealing a cold, murderous aura, and his body was torn to pieces. However, the strange thing was that there was no blood stain on the torn wounds of the young boy. His body was deformed and twisted like plastic and steel, and the black trench coat embroidered with red clouds was torn apart, so that his chest was exposed. Naturally, it was Sasori. Most of the puppets have been destroyed. How big is the world? Where is there a place for me? A desolate sigh came from Sasori's mouth, and there was a rare color of confusion in his eyes. He knew that the Akatsuki organization can no longer go back. That cruel organization is a place that pays attention to strength. Now that most of Sasori's puppets have been destroyed, there is no need to go back. They will be directly abandoned. Damn Kabuto and Orochimaru, today's hatred. I swear I won't be a man if I don't take revenge. Thinking of the initiators, Orochimaru and Kabuto, Sasori suddenly became angry, his fists clenched tightly, and he couldn't wait to tear the two of them to pieces to vent the hatred in his heart. The number of Edo Tensei army is too dense, and most of them are strong, including some Kage-level powerhouses of some ninja villages. He and Deidara can't do anything alone. Although they destroyed the opponent's puppets countless times, the Edo Tensei still perfectly repaired them. In addition, there is also an inexhaustible supply of chakra. The next few years will be peaceful. Looking at the void in front of him indifferently, Sasori sighed helplessly. 80% of his precious puppets were destroyed, including his body, which suffered great damage. Although many of the puppets could be repaired and used again, his trump card had been destroyed. He had to kill more experts to replenish the puppets he lacked. Speaking of experts, a thin figure involuntarily appeared in Scorpion's pupils. The figure reflected in Kuroto's pupils was obvious. He had messy dark hair, his eyes were bright like stars, his figure was thin and he wasn't too tall, but he had an indescribable aura. Looking carefully, it was Uchiha Dustless. If I can get him? On second thought, Scorpion's blazing eyes dimmed. This was not realistic. The stronger the person was when they were alive, the more powerful the puppet would be. There was a cold and direct killing intent in his eyes, and the corners of his mouth were also outlined with a strange and evil smile. Instinctively feeling that something was wrong, Scorpion quickly took a step back. Scorpion's eyes were round, and his face was full of surprise. He didn't know when Dustless had grabbed his arm. That terrifying force was like being pressed by a mountain weighing tens of thousands of tons, and he couldn't break free at all. Farewell, Scorpion. The strange smile at the corners of his mouth suddenly froze and turned into endless killing intent. Dustless's right arm suddenly exerted force. Pucci. Scorpion's arm was directly torn off by Dustless's brute force, and the powerful force even almost tore his shoulder, but what was incredible was that there was no blood stain on the torn wound, and the inside of the wound was completely like a screw of steel. What do you mean by this, Uchiha Dustless? After quickly retreating, Scorpion roared at Dustless with a murderous intent. Staring at Dustless with a pale face, Scorpion's murderous intent spread out like a tide. Zetsu. Throwing the removed arm to Zetsu, Dustless smiled at Scorpion and said, "What do I mean? Don't you know what I mean by now? Of course I am going to kill you." Shrugging lazily, Dustless said indifferently, "The organization no longer needs a waste like you, so naturally, I have to make you shut up in advance. Otherwise you may be the next Orochimaru. Also, the ring you are wearing will also be taken back." All of Scorpion's puppets have been destroyed, and even his body has been damaged, and now because Dustless forcibly tore off an arm, he is even more fragile. Do you know what to take back now? Taking off the ring on the arm of the puppet easily, and shaking the previous ring at Scorpion, Zetsu smiled and said, "You no longer have the ability to exist in the organization, so the things on your body must be taken out." Did Pain order you to do this? He really is his loyal lackey. Staring fiercely at Dustless and Zetsu, Scorpion roared hysterically, feeling betrayed and ruthlessly abandoned. That waste wants to order us, he is just a puppet pushed to the forefront. Black Zetsu looked at Sasori mockingly, mercilessly despising him, and sneered, "Seeing how much effort you put into the organization, I will reluctantly tell you that Uzumaki Nagato is Pain, and he is also a clown. That is to say, the person behind the scenes is you, Uchiha Dustless." Glaring at the indifferent Dustless, Sasori of the Red Sand asked with uncertainty, "What about Deidara? Was he also killed by you?" Resisting the thousands of anger in his heart, Scorpion screamed and glared at Dustless. "Don't worry, after squeezing out the last value of him, if he doesn't die, I will take care of him myself. Of course, it is the best result if he can be killed." Looking at Scorpion's eyes, Dustless said softly, "Most of you are people who wander between good and evil. You can step into the world of evil, but you can also turn back and start anew. I really can't trust you. In short, Akatsuki is a tool I use to catch tailed beasts. Since tailed beasts are about to gather, your death is the final destination." Dustless's momentum rose to the limit and he said bluntly. What's more, Dustless doesn't think that Scorpion joined Akatsuki without a purpose. Scorpion is a puppet master who pursues eternity. Making powerful puppets requires powerful corpses. Akatsuki is a super organization where monsters gather naturally. It is also the best place to make the strongest puppets. In other words, every member of Akatsuki has different purposes. In some ways, they are the most trustworthy group of people but also the least trustworthy. You are an existence who pursues eternity, Scorpion. In that case you should thank me. Ignoring Sasori, whose face was blue and purple, Dustless smiled and said, "Just like the group of people who died before, after you die, you will also become an existence like Edo Tensei, which is the eternal immortality you said." As Dustless's voice fell, Scorpion's body suddenly broke into two pieces, and he completely lost his breath. Clean up his body and evacuate. Before Zetsu could react, the light sword in Dustless's hand quickly dissipated, and his body became blurred until he finally disappeared completely between heaven and earth. Is really indifferent, Dustless-sama. White Zetsu watched Dustless disappear and couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Looking at Scorpion's body that was brutally divided, he shook his head and walked to Scorpion's side. In the depths of the dark underground, the figure of the ghetto golem could be clearly seen. 10 thick fingers stood on top of it, and in the blink of an eye, it had been 3 days since the previous incident. Scorpion was killed, it's a pity, on the head of Ghetto Mazo, a middle-aged man with orange hair said indifferently. The fluctuations in his voice had no human emotions. Whether it was a pity or not, only God would know. There is no doubt that this person is Pain. Daidara's arm was also twisted. Rinnegan opened and the black lines rippled, looking at Kakuzu. The task of combining Daidara's arm will be handed over to you. He has also served the organization for many years. Even if there is no merit, there is still hard work. His sight then fell on Dustless's body. Pain frowned, and his eyes flashed with suspicion, and immediately seemed to think of something, and the words that were about to come out of his mouth were taken back. The dead are gone, and the road in the future is still looking forward. Today I will introduce a new member to you. Pain's cold voice spread, and the entire dark cave was full of echoes. Everyone's eyes were focused on Pain, and he became the focus of attention in an instant. The requirements to enter Akatsuki were extremely high. Everyone was an S-class rebellious ninja without exception. In other words, if you want to join Akatsuki, you must have the strength to compete with the Kage-level powerhouses of each village. I'm really looking forward to it. I don't know who can join this dark organization. I hope it's a dramatic character who can relieve this heavy and oppressive atmosphere. Kisame said with a smile, and his eyes were full of expectation. It seemed that he was quite curious about the new member that he had never met before. The smile on his shark face was particularly scary. I hope so. Haydn curled his lips, and his face was full of suspicion. Obviously he had doubts about this newcomer. Wu Chen's face was full of indifference, as if this matter had nothing to do with him. He squinted his eyes, occasionally revealing a sharp light. He stared at the figure hidden in the darkness, and his eyes flashed with understanding. Dustless, who was in an excellent situation, could clearly see the other person's figure, wearing an orange spiral mask, only showing the eyes, wearing a black trench coat embroidered with red clouds, airtight. Sure enough, it's you. Uchiha Obito. No, I should call you Hoodlum now. Staring at the dark shadow that was isolated from the world in the depth of the darkness, Wu Chen's mouth curved into a meaningful smile. After looking at him deeply, Wu Chen closed his eyes calmly and started to daydream. Chapter 271. Uchiha Obito, now known as Hoodlum, joined the Akatsuki shortly after Sasori's death. On the surface he was Daidara's partner, but in fact he was the real existence of the Akatsuki behind the scenes, and it can be said that he was one of the biggest black hands. Ta-ta-ta. The sound of footsteps came out from the darkness. The cheerful footsteps were like a child jumping around, very happy, but it gave people a feeling that he hadn't grown up yet. Soon an unidentified man wearing a spiral mask came into view, although because of the mask his appearance couldn't be seen. Judging from his figure, he was a middle-aged man. Everyone's eyes were cast over, including Dustless, curiously looking at the masked man. Oh, don't stare at me like that, I will be shy. It seemed that he couldn't stand this particularly oppressive environment. Uchiha Obito, who was covered by the mask, suddenly chuckled. The sound of a brainless idiot made everyone stunned, and after looking at each other, they could see the speechlessness in each other's eyes. This kid in front of them seemed to come out for a comedy performance. The most embarrassing thing was that the masked man seemed to feel that it wasn't enough, and deliberately stroked his hair coquettishly, and danced around a few times under everyone's gaze. This guy didn't come out for a joke, right? Or is he a comedian deliberately invited by the leader? The current oppressive atmosphere in the entertainment organization. Dedale's old face suddenly turned black, as ugly as a black pot. The corners of his mouth kept twitching. He suddenly felt that teaming up with Scorpion in the past was the happiest time because this guy in front of him seemed to be the type who was lacking a string in his brain. He's like a comedian, but it's very to my taste. Oh, hello, I'm Kisame Kisame. Kisame smiled at the masked man and first greeted him. His shark face squeezed out a creepy smile, although it seemed to be a simple greeting, but there was always a feeling of eating people. Senpai, don't eat me, my thin arms and legs are not enough to fill the gap between your teeth. The masked man covered his face with his hands as if he had seen a terrifying creature that he had never seen before. He seemed to be scared silly as he retreated. Why didn't I see this kid like this when he was with me before? Wu Chen's mouth twitched without a trace. He looked at the masked man, Obito, and slandered him in his heart. Although he knew that during the mission with Dead Ale, the masked man's performance was so strange, he couldn't help but sweat for Dead Ale. The personalities of these two people didn't seem to belong to the normal category. In other words, there was no one with a normal personality in Akatsuki. Hey. Why is it always this kind of monster that enters the organization? Isn't there anyone normal? At the very least, there's someone as reliable and trustworthy as me. Haydn looked discontentedly at the masked man who was beaming with joy. He suddenly waved the three-section scythe in his hand. It looked like he wanted to test the strength of this new member again. Is this just my imagination? Even a mere zombie would think that he's worth trusting. As if he had just heard the funniest joke, the Kismet ghost shark looked at Fei Duan with ridicule in his eyes. Hearing Ghost Mermaid, Fei Duan coldly glanced at Ghost Mermaid. Knowing that Ghost Mermaid wasn't good at talking, Fei Duan shut his mouth. This kid didn't learn a lesson at all. Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry looking at Fei Duan who was carrying the scythe. He couldn't help but be speechless, sighing that this kid was hopeless. When Itachi joined Akatsuki, he had already been taught a lesson by Itachi. Later, when Dustless joined Akatsuki, this kid also challenged Dustless, but he didn't know the ability of Dustless, so he was accidentally injured by Kakuzu. Looking at his appearance now, it was obvious that he was going to teach the masked man a lesson. Wu Qin was silent. He looked at the scene that was about to play out with great interest. His face was filled with curiosity. The other members of Akatsuki looked at the masked man suspiciously. Those who could join Akatsuki were S-level defectors. This kid was weak from head to toe, and he didn't have the slightest prestige of an S-level ninja. Fei Duan coming out to test Obito was also in line with their intention, especially Pain, who was sitting on the head of the Ghetto Mazo, didn't interfere with the duel. Obviously, he was also looking forward to the performance of the masked man. To some extent, the relationship between Uzumaki Nagato and the masked man was not harmonious. Naturally, he also wanted Fei Duan to test the ability of the masked man to prepare for future emergencies. After all, there are no real friends in this world. Under absolute interests, the enemy who killed your father can sometimes become a friend. It may sound exaggerated, but that's the case. Oh, senpai is really ferocious. Is it really good to bully me like this? The masked man made a look of extreme fear and immediately continued to twist his body. Looking at Dustless, he was annoyed. He secretly cursed Uchiha Obito for being the movie emperor. If he didn't know the identity of this kid in advance, he was afraid that he would have been fooled. However, the ridicule and disdain in the depths of the masked man's eyes was still clearly captured by Dustless. He knew that the masked man was deliberately teasing Fei Duan. Is it really okay for such a guy to exist in the organization? The group of members looked at each other, and they could see the embarrassment and helplessness in each other's eyes. This kid didn't look like a master at all. As Kisame said before, it was obvious that he was here to make fun of the dark atmosphere of the entertainment organization. However, Uchiha Itachi looked at the masked man from the beginning to the end. His eyes were as calm as stagnant water from time to time splashed with ripples, and then immediately calmed down and disappeared. Well, although I don't know why the leader values you, it's impossible for you to join the Akatsuki, an organization with a strict hierarchy. At least let me see how strong you are. After that, Fei Duan rushed up with her scythe. Chapter 272. ZZZ, the scarlet three-section scythe fell on the ground, drawing a long and narrow trace and creating faint sparks. The buzzing sound of steel made the oppressive atmosphere even gloomier. This kid is always so persistent. Not knowing whether to laugh or cry, Dustless shook his head helplessly. Then he looked at the scene in front of him. Without even thinking, he could guess that the one who asked for trouble in the end must be Fei Duan. The opponent is Uchiha Obito, a super boss. Soon, the uninterested look on his face changed to, sit on top of the mountain and watch the tigers fight. Just as Ghost Mermaid said, this dark organization often had some funny entertainment shows, which were not bad and could ease the atmosphere. Senpai is so scary, so scary. The masked man twisted his body coquettishly, and his movements were particularly funny. Every time he was about to fall to the ground, his body would burst out with a wonderful elastic force, making him stand up again, similar to a roly-poly toy. I actually challenged this kind of idiot. Is my brain not enough? Regret appeared on his arrogant face. Haydn couldn't help but secretly think, and secretly scolded himself for being reckless, and also labeled the masked man as incompetent in his heart. Challenging such a person, Haydn will also be treated as an idiot. Fei Dan's gaze quietly spread out, taking in the changes in everyone's expressions. After carefully observing for a moment, the corner of his mouth twitched without leaving a trace. Not to mention the other people's strange expressions for the time being, even his partner Jiao was looking at him with disdain. It has to be said that the strange voice and funny movements did have an unexpected effect. making everyone stare at the masked man with interest and lose their vigilance against him. Cunning enough, he made everyone lose their vigilance as soon as he came. I'm afraid no one would think that the masked man in front of them is the one behind the scenes. Glancing at Ibito, Dustless secretly said in his heart. At the same time, the corner of his eyes swept across everyone, and most of them lost their vigilance, with a look of expectation on their faces, watching the wonderful performance that was about to be staged in front of them with interest. Obviously, the performance of the masked man had a decisive effect. Only people like Itachi and Pain maintained indifference and secretly remained vigilant. Hurry up and scram. Dawn isn't a place for trash like you. Waving his hand, Fei Duan also lost interest in fighting. He impatiently ordered the masked man to leave. This kind of trash with less than 5 battle power was not worth his time. It would only cause him to lose face. The masked man in front of him was exceptionally plain and vulgar. There was nothing outstanding about him. The Akatsuki was a gathering of all kinds of monsters with extraordinary strength. If one wanted to stay in the organization, they had to have the same strength. Otherwise, they would only be a burden. However, the masked man obviously had no intention of quitting, and his words directly angered Flying Duan. Sorry, Senior, I don't intend to withdraw from Akatsuki, for the time being. Even if I am not as strong as Senior now, I will definitely surpass Senior in the future. The masked man no longer had that mischievous smile on his face. He spoke very seriously. The determination in his tone moved everyone deeply. He did not seem to be backing down at all. Everyone looked at him in a new light. Fei Duan's ears were particularly harsh. The masked man was challenging him in disguise, challenging his authority as a big brother. It was simply outrageous. Go to hell, trash. Without waiting for the masked man to react, the 3-section scythe in Fei Duan's hand swept up, whistling straight towards the masked man's head. Clang! With the roaring sound of steel, flashing sparks appeared in the dark space. It could be vaguely seen that the masked man used kunai to easily block the scarlet scythe. Bah, good boy, not bad. The strength of thin arms and legs is not small. Feeling the huge force coming from his hand, Fei Duan was stunned, and immediately curled his lips in disdain. He did not expect Ibito's strength to be so great. Although he remained calm on the surface, he was extremely shocked in his heart. This boy is definitely not an ordinary person. His strength is not weaker than mine. His eyes narrowed, staring at that unprepossessing mask. Fei Duan's heart was like stormy waves. It was precisely because he was not good at other aspects that he strengthened his body. His strength was absolutely second to none. This boy in front of him deliberately hid his strength. It's really surprising he can actually resist Fei Duan's attack with such a small body, even if the strength just now was less than 50%. That masked man seems not simple. There should be no problem for him to enter Akatsuki. Kakuzu's small green eyes emitted a startled light. He and Fei Duan formed a team to earn extra money all year round. Most of the time it was Fei Duan who understood the opponent, and he was responsible for counting money, so he naturally understood Fei Duan's powerful strength. But now, Ibito could easily resist Fei Duan's attack, which also showed that he was not ordinary, although this boy looked a bit sloppy. I really looked down on you before. Fei Duan's contemptuous look gradually converged, and his eyes staring at Ibito, he said in a deep voice, but just now it was less than 50% of my strength. Looking at the masked man, Fei Duan's expression quickly tightened, his arm shook, and his strength accelerated. His strong and powerful arm danced, and the powerful force directly threw the masked man out. Bang! Chapter 273. The gigantic black shadow whizzed down, the 3 sections of the scythe shining with a cold light made people tremble in fear. In the dark night sky, it was like the death god had descended from the sky, the cold light on the scythe cutting through people's souls. In this situation, no matter who it was, they would collapse. However, the masked man's eyes reflected a different sign. The single eye exposed on the mask was as calm as water, motionless like stagnant water. Instead of showing the slightest fear, it was faintly mocking and disdainful. For the masked man, Haydn was indeed just a joke. He was simply using a chess piece and there was no other value. As if the scythe falling from the sky didn't exist, the masked man's breath was calm, like a sculpture, treating the scythe as air, ignoring it. Go to hell. As if sensing the contempt of the masked man, Fei Duan's strength became even more ferocious. Originally he had planned to scare the masked man. After all, everyone had their own way of doing things. This kind of powerless person was not his cup of tea. but the invisible ridicule in his eyes angered him. Whoosh! The cold light came head-on, and it passed through the masked man's body and cut him in half. This guy's ability seems a bit weird. His pupils dilated, and looking at the intact masked man, Hayden's eyes flashed with horror. He just saw the masked man's body being penetrated by himself. Without hesitation, he opened a distance and his hair stood up. Hayden's eyes subconsciously looked at Dustless. This ninjutsu that seems to ignore physical attacks coincides with Dustless's jutsu. At the same time, everyone also realized that something was wrong at that moment. Ignore physical attacks, the same jutsu as Dustless, it doesn't look like it. Pain, who was sitting on the head of the ghetto mazo, frowned, and his eyes stared at the masked man as if he was looking at a prey. His eyes were sharp like an eagle, and he saw through the essence of the masked man. Although it is the same as Dustless's jutsu that ignores physical attacks, it seems to be a little different. The thoughts in his mind were reversed. Picking up the past Dustless and the masked man, Pain found that there was an essential difference in their existence that ignores physical attacks. Oh, thank you, Senior, for sparing my life. Patting the dust off his butt, the masked man stood up and thanked Fei Duan, who had a pale face. His tone was extremely sincere and did not contain any falsehood. As if nothing had happened just now, the masked man didn't use any ninjutsu to turn into nothingness. Do you think this is the end? Even though the masked man was wearing a mask, Fei Duan could still see the face behind his scarlet eyes that were filled with killing intent. What entered his eyes was the other party's unbridled mockery and contempt. Of course, this was all because of Fei Duan's pride. The show is about to begin. Taking a deep breath, Fei Duan said firmly in a deep voice. Just as he was about to go up and fight with the masked man, Pain's calm voice suppressed him with a majestic voice. That's all for today. From now on Hoodlum will replace Scorpion's position. Looking around, Pain said faintly. His tone was authoritative and no one dared to defy him. As members of the Akatsuki, the most powerful leader in the Akatsuki, no one can ignore his existence. Boy, you're lucky, you better not have a next time, otherwise. With a cold snort, Fei Duan returned to Kakuzu's side silently. These words were extremely radical, which was equivalent to tacitly admitting that Hoodlum joined the Akatsuki. Looking up and looking at the masked man, Deidara was about to complain, but he was stared back by Pain's fierce eyes. Shrinking his neck, the words that were about to come out of his mouth poured back into his heart, and Deidara closed his mouth. It's a good match. Staring at the dancing masked man with a smile, Dustless's pupils suddenly narrowed, and the gaze from his eyes was extremely dangerous. The focus of his gaze was on the masked man. This kid's ability is really troublesome. If we gather all the tailed beasts in the future, will he? Forget it, there is no need to worry about this problem. Shaking his head, Dustless's mouth had a confident smile, and his eyes were shining with a burning brilliance, like the bright stars in the night, which was particularly attractive. Sick. Looking at Dustless, who was proud of himself for no reason, Conan frowned slightly, and her face was slightly cold. She looked at him without understanding, but her words directly made Dustless vomit blood. You have to choose the right time to act up. Staring at Dustless with uncertainty, Conan sneered. Sick? Dustless's mouth twitched fiercely when he heard the words. He looked at Conan gloomily, rolled his eyes and said angrily, sick is also lovesickness. It seemed that he was afraid that Conan didn't understand what he meant, so he added, the object of lovesickness is far away but close at hand. After that, regardless of Conan's state, Dustless simply closed his eyes. Out of sight, out of mind, he was thinking about his own plan. Xuanhuan, who came back to her senses, flew into a rage out of humiliation. She glared angrily at Wu Qin, who had his eyes closed. Her pretty face was slightly red, and there was a charming dimple on her smooth pretty face. She looked like a ripe honey peach and couldn't help but want to take a bite. Her eyes were burning with flames and she couldn't wait to tear that cheap mouth into pieces. She didn't know what the word reserved meant. Dustless was thinking about other plans in his heart. As long as he trained Uchiha Obito in the system, all problems would be solved. However, if he trained the character in the system, he would be at his peak, which means that Dustless will face the Jubi's Jinchuriki, Uchiha Obito. The two sides are completely betting on a duel of life and death. Such a dramatic thing as Obito's collapse can't happen in the system. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.